The Abominable Love, a novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This tale is a work of fiction, but the entire novel is based on a real love story between an Arab girl and an African boy. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Therefore, any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 42. A Sacrifice as a Kurban Offering for the True Love. Once the Arab wife, Insaf, and her African husband, Dang, were able to resolve their dispute, they found themselves in a greater challenge because of their religious problem. It has become a matter of life or death for them. They know that they cannot be together as a legal husband and his lawful Muslim wife without risking their lives. According to the Sudanese law, which is based on Islamic Sharia law, they are no longer husband and wife. They also dropped their plan to flee to South Sudan and live among Christians, where Sharia laws do not apply. They do not have any legal document proving their marital relationship if they are interrogated or challenged during their journey from Khartoum to Juba, which will take more than 10 days by train and ship. Their marriage certificate was torn up by those two racist Arab policemen who caught them kissing each other on the riverbank and considered it an abominable act practiced in a public place and punishable by Sharia law. They also know that the imam of the mosque who performed their Islamic marriage will not issue a true copy of their certificate because he also accepted the Sharia court ruling that annulled their Islamic marriage on the grounds of inadequacy between their tribes, African versus Arab, which made them unmarriageable. After all the doors of hope are closed in their faces, the African husband suggested that they should travel outside of Sudan, and as soon as they arrived in any foreign country, they must apply for refugee status and resettlement in the West. The Arab wife expressed her appreciation for the new plan and hoped that they would succeed in migrating out of Sudan. When they arrived at their new plan, the two persecuted lovers found themselves forced to choose between 3 foreign countries: Egypt, Kenya, and India. At the time, the lover Dang and his beloved Insaf planned to flee their country due to religious persecution and racial discrimination. More than 4 million Sudanese are living in Egypt. Most of them are forced to flee their country and live there due to political persecution, ethnic cleansing, and jihad wars waged by the Sudanese army, Muslim Mujahideen, and the notorious Janjaweed forces in southern Sudan, the Nuba Mountains, and the Darfur region. In Egypt, they can seek safe haven from the dictatorship and barbarism of the Islamic government in Sudan. The genocide in South Sudan, Darfur, and the Nuba Mountains also forced hundreds of thousands of people to flee their towns and villages to Kenya and Chad. Hundreds of thousands of African women were raped before being turned into war slaves and sex maidservants for Arabs. African children were forcibly converted from Christianity to Islam. Slavery is the lesser of the evils experienced by non-Arab people in South Sudan, Darfur, and the Nuba Mountains. Those who do not succeed in escaping to Kenya, Uganda, or Chad will be slaughtered by government militias in the name of the holy war of Islamic Jihad. Reports from Sudanese refugees in Egypt are extremely disturbing. Conditions in refugee camps in Kenya and Chad are also miserable. Egyptian government agents and Arab police treat Sudanese refugees more harshly than they encountered in their homeland. The country that has the least evil for Sudanese refugees is India. About 10,000 Sudanese students studying in Indian universities. 90% of these Sudanese foreign students in India are Northern Arabs. Once they finish their studies, they will try to immigrate to the Arab Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, or Kuwait. Students from South Sudan have good opportunities to obtain refugee status in India and resettlement in one of the Western countries such as Canada, Australia, the United States of America, or some European countries. None of the students like to return to the hell of Sudan, except for the supporters of the religious government, such as the Muslim Brotherhood. The only way for the persecuted couple to travel to India is through admission to an Indian university. Fortunately, the African husband Deng has cousins who are studying at the University of Bombay. He corresponded with them and explained to them the racial problems he is suffering from because he married an Arab girl. They encouraged him to leave Sudan and come with his wife to India. Deng sent his higher secondary certificate. He has been accepted into the pre-medical program at the University of Bombay. The southern cousins advised their African cousin to bring his Arab wife on a tourist visa. Insaf does not have a high school certificate because her Arab father took her out of school when she was in the 10th grade because he discovered that she had fallen in an abominable love with the so-called black-faced African Negro slave. At that time, Insaf had not yet completed the 12th grade. For this reason, she can only travel to India on a 6-month tourist visa. Her tourist visa can be changed once she obtains refugee status in India. With the carefully orchestrated new plan in mind, the couple went to the Indian embassy in Khartoum and obtained their student and tourist visas. By this time, the Arab wife Insaf is 5 months pregnant. Therefore, her pregnancy slowed her movement. The entire process of attempting to flee to India took more than 1 month. During this period, the two intimate lovers, Insaf and Deng, spent most of their time hiding inside their small hut in the shanty town of Al-Ashash neighborhood. This locality, as we mentioned previously, is one of the poorest neighborhoods and has the dirtiest huts in the triangular capital city of Sudan. Its inhabitants are all of the so-called black Shingo African slaves, except for Deng's wife, the white Arab girl Insaf. The two intimate lovers never left their hut together. Although they have booked their flights on the same plane, they went independently to the airline office. On the appointed day of their departure from the hell of Sudan, they woke up exceedingly early in the morning. The first thing they did was pack their bags. Their flight is scheduled to depart from Khartoum International Airport at 3:45 p.m. on the same day. On that day, the two lovers have their last lovemaking in Sudan inside their small hut. They are like two birds who are about to fly from their nest and migrate to a beautiful remote homeland. They reach the peak of their sexual climax, where the beautiful and sexy Arab girl, Insaf, has an earth-shattering orgasm, and the phallus of the African lover, Deng, has ejaculated a quantity of semen into his lover's pussy. And they have become one body. After they packed their bags, they spent the rest of the day inside their small hut, which looked like a cave. The Arab wife, Insaf, resisted the urge to go and bid farewell to Haj Abdullah and his family. The African prodigal son, Deng, also tended to approach his parents and bid them farewell. They decided to write to them some letters from India and apologize for not informing them of their departure and the reason for their eternal migration from their motherland. The two eternal friends, Insaf and Deng, felt happy and excited that day. They knew that they would leave the land of false pride and hateful racial prejudice and go to a secular, enlightened country where they could be treated as other human beings who enjoy the same equality and dignity regardless of their religion, race, gender, or color. In India, they will be liberated from the unjust Islamic law of the Sharia court, which discriminated between them and invalidated their halal Islamic marriage contract due to the difference in their African and Arab tribes and the colors of their black and white skins. At noon, the lovers changed their clothes and put on new outfits that they had bought especially for their overseas flight. In an abbreviated time, the eternal lovers, Insaf and Deng, are ready to go to the Khartoum International Airport. They carried their bags, took their travel documents, passports, and airline tickets, and were about to open the door and leave their small love nest, but they heard the steps of strangers approaching the door of their hut. The barking of the hungry dogs, the chatter of the black women, the loud voices of the African men, and the cries of the miserable children indicated that the neighbors do not know those strangers. The violent knock on their door confirmed their fears and suspicions. They realized that only the Sudanese police will knock on the door in this rude and uncivilized manner. The African husband whispered in his Arab wife's ear to step back and let him know who the new arrivals are. He glanced outside. Through a small hole in the tin door, he saw the people who are standing at their door. His vision became filled with the huge bodies of two Arab policemen who are wearing the khaki uniforms, their faces scowling like two terrifying demons emerging from hell. He started sweating and shaking from fear. The two policemen are carrying large batons and pistols are strapped to the left side of their waists. Ding somehow overcame his fear and raised his head. He ran to Insaf and grabbed her hands. His wife saw his terrified face and correctly guessed the reason for his fear. She began to tremble like a reed, and her heart began to beat rapidly. Ding leaned his tall body over her small body and brought his face close to hers. His eyes opened wide. "Listen, dear," the African husband whispered in his Arab wife's ear. "Our hut will be invaded in a moment by two Arab policemen armed with blades and firearms. We both cannot escape from them. We do not have a window in our hut to break into, jump through, escape from them, flee to Khartoum International Airport, and travel together. Our only way out is through the door. Therefore, one of us must sacrifice his life for the other, and this Kurban sacrificial offering is me. I will open the door and attack the two armed Arab policemen and give you a safe way to escape from them. Run straight out of our hut, take a taxi, and speed off to the Khartoum International Airport. Don't stop or look behind you. Here are the 2 tickets, 2 visas, 2 Sudanese passports, and the few foreign American dollars we have. Forget about our 2 suitcases and the rest of your luggage because you cannot carry them with you while fleeing from our hut. Remember that you are not alone. You have my baby in your womb. If I got killed as a sacrifice today, I am confident that you will give birth to the baby in India and raise our child, and he or she will carry my name with pride." Then the frightened Arab wife whispered fearfully in the ear of her brave African husband, "I cannot let you die. I cannot go without you. I love you, Ding. I want to die with you. I love you too, Insaf, but this is the only way our love will last. Through your survival and through the birth of our child, I will live with you forever. Escape now and go as quickly as possible to the Khartoum International Airport and travel to India." Before Ding could finish his words, he heard heavy boots and huge hands beating and trying to force open the door. He pulled his wife aside, rushed to the door, and opened it wide. Before the 2 Arab policemen rushed inside, he hit one of them on his nose with his fist. The policeman fell on his back and hit his head on the concrete of the dirty, running sewer water and fainted. The other policeman raised his baton and hit Ding on the left shoulder. The African wrestler jumped over his body and grabbed his hands. Then Ding shouted as he held the other policeman with difficulty, "Run quickly, my beloved wife, Insaf." The policeman kicked his body, bit him on the shoulder with his sharp teeth, and shook him to free himself from his grip, but he could not. As soon as the Arab wife left the hut, she jumped over the body of the other fallen policeman, who is still unconscious, and entered one of the narrow alleys filled with dirt, holes, and stones, and headed towards the main street. She looked behind her and saw her African husband and the huge Arab policeman wrestling until they fell into the gutter. The black-skinned African male neighbors rushed towards them and tried to separate them, while their black women stood apart as they saw for the first time in their lives a Jingo man daring to attack an armed Arab policeman. By then, the fleeing Arab wife has crossed the narrow corridor and entered the main road. She waved her trembling hand to a taxi, and when it stopped, she got into it. In these tough times, she remembered the day she escaped from her wealthy Arab fiancé, Samir Wad Massoud, in the city of Port Sudan. However, the difference is excessively big because that day she escaped from the shadow of scandal, and today she escapes from the specter of death. In a breathless voice, the fleeing Arab wife asked the taxi driver to speed her to the Khartoum International Airport. As soon as the driver took his foot off the brake and pressed the accelerator, Insaf heard a pistol shot. She closed her eyes and began to cry bitterly over the killing of her beloved African husband Deng. The frightened Arab wife, Insaf, was unable to see anything before her eyes except blood. Everything before her eyes became stained and covered in red. Her eyes shed rivers of hot tears. She imagined her African husband, Deng, falling into the sinkhole, his white shirt stained with blood and covered in the dirt of the gutter. Her mind is struggling hard to deny the fact that the person she spent the most wonderful days of her life with was brutally murdered before her eyes. The taxi arrived at the international airport after a long journey through the crowded streets of the triangular capital of Sudan. Then the driver opened the door for the beautiful and charming passenger traveling out of her fatherland. Insaf paid the fare with trembling hands, then walked slowly away from the taxi. Her weak feet somehow made it to the crowded entrance of the international airport. Her teary eyes searched everywhere for her brave African husband, who had become a sacrificial victim for their eternal love. She sees all the passengers around her as dangerous Arab Muslim terrorists who killed her beloved African husband. They appeared to her as frightening creatures that could transform into deadly black ghosts and attack and kill her at any time. The crowd then forced her to move on. Insaf moved with the human flow of travelers until she reached the police inspection office. She has no luggage to weigh. A fat Sudanese Arab woman told her to move more quickly because she was blocking the way. While she is standing in the lengthy line of passengers, the Arab wife escaping death is facing the entrance. She is still waiting and hoping for the miraculous appearance of her beloved African husband. Her heart cries for him. Her body longed for his touch, his hugs, his lovemaking. "Can you look at me and show me your travel papers, ma'am?" An international airport police officer said to Insaf. The sad Arab wife threw her travel papers on the table without turning her face towards the policeman who addressed her. Despite everything, her eyes are still desperately searching for her African husband, the martyr of love, Deng, in the crowd. "Please, ma'am, take your passport, ticket, and boarding pass and go to gate number 12. Insaf snatched her travel papers from the police officer's hand and looked at his face angrily. She hated him bitterly because he is a policeman. She hated his face even more when she saw that he is a northern Arab. She resisted the boiling anger that prompted her to think about extending her right hand and slapping his face with all her might. Then the lonely Arab wife went to gate number 12 and stood aside. She is still looking behind her and waiting for her brave African husband to appear and embrace her. Then the two lovers can fly from the hell of their Muslim country, Sudan, and land in the paradise of the secular state of India. While she is immersed in an ocean of darkness of sadness, the fleeing Arab wife heard the voice of a Sudanese lady addressing her. "Excuse me, miss, are you traveling on flight number 577? Insaf just stared at her without answering her question, and she knew from her elegant dress that she is an air hostess. Before Insaf could show her the ticket, passport, and boarding pass, the flight attendant asked her, "Can I look at your foreign flight papers?" Then she took the travel papers from her hand and looked at them. "Please come with me quickly, miss. We will close the plane door soon." Then the Sudanese flight attendant took the hand of the Arab wife, Insaf, and ran her through the narrow gate number 12. When they arrived on the plane, she asked another air hostess to take the late passenger to her seat. The same miss asked another flight attendant, "Is the plane full now, or is there a late passenger who has not arrived yet?" The second flight attendant replied, "There is still one passenger who has not arrived yet. Give me 5 minutes to find that late passenger. Some of these gullible passengers can get lost in a 1 square meter space. Unless someone drags them like stray sheep and brings them to the plane as if it is a sheep truck, they will not be able to board." Then the flight attendant who brought the late goat ran again to look for the stray sheep passenger. She returned a few minutes later and asked her fellow air hostess to tell her the name of the missing passenger. The flight attendant inside the plane shouted to the air hostess who is standing at the entrance, "His name is Mr. Deng Majok." "No wonder he is late," the Sudanese Arab flight attendant shouted sarcastically. Insaf overheard the conversation between the two racist Arab air hostesses and added them to her hate list. Then the flight attendant came 10 minutes later and said angrily to her colleague, "Please close the plane door and let Mr. Deng Majok return to the African jungle in South Sudan where he came from and lives like a sloth monkey hanging between the trees." The sarcastic racist words of the air hostess have struck the heart of the Arab wife Insaf like poisoned arrows. In response, she stood up from her seat and looked straight into the face of the rude Sudanese flight attendant. Then she shouted loudly, "The late passenger, Mr. Deng Majok, is more civilized, educated, and honorable than you. The African Deng Majok is about to graduate from the University of Khartoum and become a doctor. His southern father is a first lieutenant general and a senior military official in the Sudanese army, and his Ethiopian mother is an English language teacher at the higher secondary school for girls in the city of Riyadh in Khartoum. He is my husband, and I am his wife, and I now carry his child in my womb with honor, pride, and dignity. The racist Sudanese air hostess fearfully asked, "Who are you addressing with these words, miss?" "I am speaking to you." "Did I speak to you?" "You spoke very disgusting, hateful, and vulgar racist words against my African husband, Mr. Deng Majok." The other flight attendant said politely, "Please, Mrs. Insaf Salah Al-Junaid, calm down and sit in your seat." Then she came and stood near the angry Arab wife of the African husband, Mr. Deng Majok Nasser. The same flight attendant continued, "My colleague, Flight Attendant Nawal Ibrahim, always jokes in this ridiculous way. She often asks me to return to my hometown, Wad Sharifi, located on the outskirts of the city of Kassala in eastern Sudan, and ride a camel or donkey, as the girls of Al-Zabadiya or the Hadandoa women do." The angry Arab wife did not even take her seat until the air hostess gently patted her shoulder, helped her sit down, and fastened her seat belt. Shortly after, the plane took off without the missing African passenger, Deng Majok, the husband of the most beautiful passenger on board. Chapter 43. The Legal Sharia Ruling on the Adulterer. The military lieutenant general Mr. Majok Nasir was the first to receive a phone call informing him that his only son, Deng, had been shot dead by a policeman because he had tried to obstruct law enforcement officers by arresting him while he was committing adultery with an adulterous woman who was not his legal wife. The African father immediately called his Ethiopian wife, Ababa, Deng's mother, and told her in a crying voice the sad news. Then he was quickly rushed to Omdurman General Hospital. On his way, he drove through 3 red lights and nearly caused 2 car accidents. 3 traffic police officers chased him on their motorcycles, but did not catch him. He drives his car at a mad speed of more than 100 kilometers per hour through the crowded streets of the capital city. In front of the hospital, he parked his car in the wrong place and rushed to the emergency unit. Mr. Nasser then prostrated himself in front of the gurney, where his son's body was covered with a white sheet stained with the red blood of his murdered son. Shortly after, the Abyssinian mother, Mrs. Ababa Nasser, collapsed next to her son's body and began wailing and crying. The body of the victim, Kurban of Love Sacrifice Deng, was then transported to the surgery room, and 2 doctors and 3 nurses followed behind the stretcher. Mr. Nasser and Mrs. Nasser remained lying on the floor while constantly crying over the death of their beloved son. 3 hours later, one of the doctors came out and knelt in front of the parents. He touched Mr. Nasser's head gently and said to him, "Your son is not dead yet. He is still alive. We removed the bullet from his chest, but he is still in an extremely critical condition. You have to ask God to preserve his life." Another hour later, the stretcher was taken out of the surgery room and 2 nurses carried it to the intensive care unit. The parents wanted to take a look at their son, but the nursing staff prevented them. After the surgery was over, Deng stayed in the intensive care unit for a week. During this period, he remained in a coma. His recovery has been a terribly slow process. It took 1 month before Deng was able to open his eyes and recognize the people around him. During that period, his parents spent a lot of money on his treatment. They paid for his stay in a private room in the hospital. They bought the most expensive medicine for his quick recovery. As soon as the doctor declared Deng competent to speak to, 3 senior police officers entered his private room and interrogated him. They took his statements about the incident and explained to him the reason behind 2 policemen raided his hut in the shantytown of Al-Lashash neighborhood more than a month ago. Before they left, they chained his right leg to the hospital bed in his private room and kept 2 armed policemen in front of his room to guard him and prevent him from escaping before he would be tried for the crime of adultery. At the door, Mr. Nasser intercepted the three senior police officers and demanded an explanation for the inhumane treatment to which his son has been subjected. The African father shouted at the police officers, "My son is not a rabid dog to be chained from his leg to his hospital bed." "Your son is under arrest, sir," one of the police officers said. Mr. Nasser asked, "What is his crime?" "Your son assaulted two policemen while they were carrying out their duty." "My son would not have done something like this unless the two policemen had attacked him first and tried to kill him for no good reason." The two policemen came to arrest him in his hut because he had violated the Islamic law by having illegal sexual intercourse with his ex-wife, Mrs. Insaf Salah al-Junaid, who had been separated from him by the Sharia court. The Sharia court judge had annulled his Islamic marriage to her. Therefore, they were living together in an adulterous relationship, which had become unacceptable and forbidden by the Sharia and is punishable by law. Why didn't the law prevent that criminal Arab whore from returning to my son's hut? Your son prevented the police from arresting the girl in question. She ran away from their hut and disappeared somewhere. She is now an adulterous woman wanted by the police on charge of committing adultery with a man other than her legal husband and escaping arrest. I will file a complaint with the highest authority at the military headquarters because of the ill treatment to which my sick son is subjected. Please go ahead and file your complaint against us. However, if you try to hinder us from doing our duty, we will arrest you and chain you like your criminal son. We may even beat you to death if you try to obstruct justice. Do you know who I am? I don't care who you are. I am a major general and a senior official in the Sudanese army. Even if you are the president of the Democratic Republic of Sudan, I will arrest you and put you on chains if you break the law." 2 weeks later, the African husband Deng has been released from the hospital and taken to jail in a police car. His father tried to release him, but he failed. The jail administration even deprived the father of his right to bail his son prior to his appearance before the Sharia court judge. Not long after, the trial of the accused, Deng Majak Nasir, is held on Sunday afternoon. In the Sharia court in Khartoum, the suspect Deng has been found guilty of violating the law by committing adultery with a woman who is not his legal wife. The accused fugitive woman, Insaf Salah al-Junaid, has also been convicted in absentia of the same immoral crime. Both adulterers are sentenced to 100 lashes on their bare backs and buttocks. Mr. Majak Nasir went everywhere and did everything he could in the hope of preventing the Sharia court from beating his son to death. He met with the highest authority in the Sudanese army and begged them to intervene and save the life of his only son. To satisfy him, the commander-in-chief of the military headquarters telephoned the president of Sudan and asked him to drop the charge of adultery against the son of the first lieutenant general, Mr. Majak Nasir. He praised the courageous stance shown by the military general, Mr. Nasser, in the many battles he fought in South Sudan against the Christian infidel rebels, followers of John Garang de Mabir. Then Mr. President asked the Sharia court to stop the implementation of the adultery ruling. The Sharia court judge rejected the request and informed His Excellency the President that no human being can escape the punishment of God and His noble Prophet Muhammad, may the prayers and peace of Allah be upon him. To support his irrevocable religious verdict, the judge quoted the Prophet's hadith in which he said that if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, has stolen, Muhammad would have cut off her hand. The president could not grant the convicted adulterer Deng a presidential pardon as he did to Insaf because the Sharia court's ruling is irrevocable and cannot be annulled. When all humanitarian efforts failed, Mr. Majak Nasser approached the Sharia court and offered to pay 100,000 Sudanese pounds for each whip against his innocent son. The chief judge of the Sharia court, who issued the flogging sentence against Deng, informed the father Mr. Majak Nasir that even if he offered $10,000 for each whip, the punishment of God and His messenger cannot be lifted from his adulterous son. When the so-called divine judgment has been implemented on the alleged adulterous husband Deng on a Friday afternoon, his body has turned into a corpse again. The punishment for adultery has been carried out by 2 executioners in a public place and witnessed by a group of believers, as commanded by the Quranic text. His flesh has been torn apart by whips and his spine has been severely damaged. Before the executioners reached 40 lashes, Deng lost consciousness. Despite this, the two cruel executioners brutally beat the back of the adulterous African husband until they completed 100 lashes. Then his body has been transported in an ambulance to the hospital to conduct an autopsy on the lifeless corpse that is brutally killed. But Mr. Majak Nasir insisted that 3 doctors must examine his son's body before he could be taken for an autopsy. A doctor had already examined Deng's body and declared him dead. A second doctor also came and examined the body and confirmed the first doctor's statements. The nursing staff and 3 policemen tried to convince the father to allow them to transfer his son's body into the autopsy room. However, Mr. Majak Nasir grabbed the stretcher and told them that unless they killed him, he would not leave the stretcher or allow them to take his dead son for an autopsy. The nursing staff understood that intense sadness has taken over the father's heart and that there is no way to convince him but to surrender to his request. Therefore, out of mercy and compassion, a third doctor has been requested to examine the son's corpse. The third doctor confirmed the death of the African son, but said there is still life in his brain. He assured the medical team that his brain would also die within a few minutes. At present, he added, the African son is clinically dead. Half an hour later, the same doctor came and examined Deng's lifeless body. The medical team is then asked to wait for another 30 minutes. His parents entered into fits of anger when they heard the doctor's words. Mr. Nasser then threatened to telephone the military headquarters and report this inhumane treatment of his son's body. When the nursing staff refused to transfer the body to the emergency unit, the angry father informed his senior commanders at the military headquarters at the General Command. Half an hour later, the military ambulance arrived at the civil hospital. The medical staff at the civil hospital initially refused to allow the dead son's body to be transferred to the military hospital. The police also tried to prevent the army soldiers from transporting the body to their hospital. The doctor, who previously examined the lifeless body, ordered that the clinically dead body must be sent to the emergency unit until its brain is dead too. Deng's father and mother opposed the idea and insisted that their son's body should be transferred to the military hospital. Reluctantly, the medical team and the police officers agreed to the transfer. Inside the military ambulance, Deng's body has been supplied with blood. At the military hospital, the doctors and nurses realized that the body has lost a lot of fluid and blood. When they examined his damaged back, they discovered that they could not perform any surgery on him. They only cleaned the deep wounds and covered his seriously injured back with a huge bandage. Then the body is kept inside the intensive care unit until the morning. Throughout the night, military nursing staff supplied blood and fluids to the severely damaged body. Deng remained in a coma for 3 days, and every doctor who examined his body lost hope of his survival. Each one of them expected that he would die before the sunrise on the next morning. Fortunately, on the 4th night, a senior surgeon gave a tiny ray of hope to the distressed parents. This military surgeon is called Hassan Mabruk, and he is a brigadier general originally from South Sudan and the Dinka tribe. Because of the beating a week later, doctors at the military hospital decided to perform major surgery on Deng's damaged body. The operation has been performed by the 2 best neurosurgeons in the military hospital, Hassan Mabruk and Kukatia. The military neurosurgeon Kukatia is a black African Sudanese originally from the Nuba Mountains. The operation took 7 long hours. After the complex surgery, the parents have been told by the military hospital that their son might live, but he might not be able to walk or talk again. His spine is seemingly irreparably damaged due to the cruel flogging during the execution of the adultery sentence on him in a public place. The African husband who miraculously survived 2 premeditated murder attempts remained in the military hospital for a month until his release. He is in a catatonic state and could not move any part of his paralyzed body when his parents returned him home. His parents took him to their beautiful residence, which is located in a luxurious neighborhood called Riyadh City. On the same day, Mr. Majak Nasir reconciled with his divorced wife, Mrs. Ababa Nasir. He apologized for her first divorce, took her back as his wife, and promised that he would not divorce her again, no matter what happened between them. The Ethiopian mother took an indefinite leave from her teaching position at the girls' high school and stayed home to care for and nurse her beloved son. Meanwhile, Deng has not said a word since the Sharia court flogged him with 100 lashes on his bare back. After a month, he regained consciousness and mental strength, but he could not be able to express his thoughts and feelings in words. 3 months later, the military neurosurgeon Hassan Mabruk recommended that Deng must undergo another spinal surgery. But he said that this complex and difficult surgery cannot be performed in Sudan due to the lack of appropriate medical equipment. For this reason, the African neurosurgeon recommended to the parents that the sick son should be sent to London in the United Kingdom to undergo such complex and difficult neurological surgery on his damaged spine. He warned them not to allow any Sudanese, Egyptian, Arab, or African neurosurgeon to perform such a difficult operation on their son. He expected it would end in permanent paralysis or death inside the surgery room if it has been performed by a neurosurgeon in Africa or Arabia. The parents accepted the advice, and 3 weeks later, Mrs. Ababa Nasser traveled with her beloved son Deng to England. The spinal surgery has been performed 3 days after they arrived in London. The surgery process is exceptionally long and complicated. A good British neurosurgeon performed it. Unfortunately, after the operation, some English doctors discovered that the Sudanese son, Deng, might not be able to walk again for the rest of his life. Therefore, he has been put in a wheelchair. However, the second spinal nerve surgery helped the son move his tongue and speak. Not long after that, Deng, the disabled African son, and his Ethiopian mother, Ababa, have returned to Sudan with great disappointment and frustration. What frustrated the parents even more is the bitter fact that their beloved African son is no longer able to stand on his feet and return to the prestigious Faculty of Medicine at the University of Khartoum.